The pace of legal and political drama surrounding former President Donald Trump accelerated once again as his legal team rushed an emergency filing late Tuesday night after signs emerged that the long-running Comey-related case was weakening at a speed that even seasoned analysts did not anticipate. According to individuals familiar with the matter and observers who have followed every turn of the legal saga, the sudden filing marked one of the clearest indications yet that Trump's team recognized a rapidly shifting landscape, one that could reshape not only the outcome of the case, but also the broader national narrative around government investigations, political motivations and institutional credibility. The emergency filing arrived during a moment of intense pressure for the former president, whose ongoing legal burdens have created a constant cycle of courtroom developments, political commentary and media frenzy. But this filing appeared different in tone and urgency. Those close to the situation noted that the language used by his attorneys signaled a defensive maneuver intended to halt what they viewed as an unraveling of the foundation of the Comey-related allegations. At the center of the collapse were questions about procedural handling, evidence reliability and testimony consistency, factors that legal experts have long pointed to as potential weak points in the case. For months Trump and his allies had argued that the case, stemming from decisions and actions connected to former FBI Director James Comey, was politically constructed and institutionally flawed. Critics of Trump, however, consistently claimed that the investigations were warranted and built on layers of evidence. But as the newest disclosures surfaced, including internal memos, conflicting accounts from involved officials and the reported hesitation of key witnesses, momentum swung unexpectedly. What had previously appeared to be a potentially damaging legal thread shifted into a scenario that Trump advisors privately described as a collapsing narrative. The emergency filing sought immediate judicial intervention to dismiss particular motions and restrict the admissibility of new submissions that the Trump legal team argued were based on inaccurate interpretations of investigative procedures. Lawyers representing Trump insisted that recent revelations demonstrated not only weakness but fundamental errors in how the Comey material had been handled, both internally by investigators and externally in the public domain. One attorney connected to the defense privately commented that the timeline of leaks, contradictory statements and shifting claims created an environment so unstable that urgent legal action became unavoidable. Observers noted that the collapse of key elements of the case did not happen in a single moment, but rather through an erosion of credibility that unfolded over several days. A pivotal point came when documents emerged suggesting that earlier characterization of Comey's notes may have been misinterpreted or misrepresented within internal reviews. Those documents triggered a cascade effect that raised fresh doubts about whether the original investigative framework had been applied consistently and fairly. Analysts remarked that when a case relies heavily on documentation, authenticity and chain of custody clarity, even minor inconsistencies can open the door to significant legal challenges. Political repercussions were immediate. Supporters of Trump celebrated the developments as vindication of their long-held claims that investigations tied to Comey were politically tainted. They noted that the rapid weakening of the case supported Trump's assertion that he had been targeted by biased actors within federal institutions. Social media platforms lit up with supporters amplifying the news and demanding broader reviews into investigative practices. Meanwhile, critics of the former president reacted with skepticism, arguing that the collapse of certain elements did not necessarily absolve him of broader allegations. They contended that the legal process must continue without interference. Inside Washington, the reaction was mixed. Some lawmakers expressed frustration at the volatile nature of the information flow around the case, noting that the American public has been repeatedly exposed to dramatic swings in narrative. Others called for transparency and full release of documents to ensure that the public could understand why the case was weakening and what that meant for the future of politically sensitive investigations. The intense public interest added pressure on officials who were already dealing with a complex blend of legal process, political stakes and media scrutiny. The emergency filing also touched on the issue of selective disclosures. Trump's attorneys argued that partial release of materials created a distorted public impression and allowed critics to draw conclusions not based on the full context. According to their filing, selective leaks amounted to an unfair public trial outside the courtroom, fueled by commentary that shaped perceptions before the facts could be properly evaluated. They insisted that without judicial action, the damage from misinformation could become irreversible. Analysts with experience in high-profile federal cases noted that it is not unusual for filings of this nature to appear when a case shifts direction unexpectedly. However, the speed with which the Comey-related allegations weakened raised eyebrows even among veteran observers. One former federal prosecutor commented that the disintegration was faster than typical and suggested that internal miscommunications or misinterpretations may have played a more significant role than initially understood. Others pointed to political pressure and public attention as possible influences on the pace at which new information came to light. Inside Trump's circle, the developments were viewed as a significant opportunity to reshape the narrative. Advisors recognize that legal momentum can be as important as legal evidence, particularly in cases with political overtones. A collapsed narrative can be wielded as a political weapon, especially when it supports long-standing claims of institutional bias. The emergency filing signaled that Trump intended to capitalize on that moment by pushing aggressively for legal remedies that align with his public messaging. Despite the weakening of the case, uncertainty still hovered. Legal experts cautioned that although elements were collapsing, the broader situation remained complex. The collapse of one thread does not automatically nullify adjacent threats or related legal matters. They emphasized that emergency filings are also strategic tools meant to force the courts to react to rapidly changing conditions. While the filing suggested confidence from the Trump team, it also reflected the high-stakes environment in which every procedural move carries weight. As media networks rushed to cover the emergency filing, anchors and analysts debated what the developments meant for the future of investigations involving high-ranking officials. Some argued that the Comey case collapse would fuel long-term distrust of federal institutions and could spark renewed calls for structural reforms. Others countered that the collapse might instead demonstrate that institutional checks work because weak or flawed cases do not survive judicial scrutiny. The dual interpretations underscored the polarized environment that has defined much of the national political conversation. In the days following the filing, the political temperature continued to rise. Several lawmakers issued statements demanding hearings to review how the Comey-related material had been handled from its inception to the present moment. They argued that the public deserved answers about inconsistencies and whether political motivations influenced any stage of the process. Opponents of those calls claimed that renewed hearings would politicize the matter further and distract from other pressing national issues. Yet the pressure showed no signs of easing. Public reaction also reflected the divided nature of the moment. For many Americans, the constant cycle of investigations, hearings, filings and counter-filings has generated fatigue. Some expressed frustration at the never-ending legal battle surrounding national figures. Others said they felt validated or outraged depending on their political leanings. The collapse of another case in a long string of contentious legal battles added to a sense of uncertainty about the reliability of institutional processes and the fairness of political oversight. Trump's emergency filing sought not only legal protection but also narrative control. By moving quickly, his team aimed to frame the disintegration of the Comey case as evidence that they had been unfairly targeted and that the original case lacked integrity. The filing emphasized procedural inconsistencies and urged the court to acknowledge substantial flaws. Whether that argument will prevail remains uncertain, but the filing itself signaled that Trump sees an opening to shift the legal and political momentum in his favor. As legal analysts examined the contents of the filing, they noted that the document was crafted to address both legal audiences and public observers. Its focus on procedural errors served a dual purpose, establishing grounds for dismissal while also reinforcing popular political messaging about fairness and bias. The structure of the arguments suggested careful coordination between legal strategy and communication strategy, something that has become a hallmark of Trump's approach during high-profile cases. The collapse of the Comey case has also reignited debate over the handling of politically sensitive investigations. Some former officials argued that the system lacks clear standards for ensuring transparency without compromising investigative integrity. Others believe that political cases should be handled by independent bodies to reduce accusations of bias. The current situation has amplified those voices as both sides search for lessons and seek to prevent future controversies. In private conversations, according to individuals familiar with the situation, Trump advisors expressed cautious optimism. They viewed the collapse as a significant turning point, but remained aware that unpredictability has defined a legal landscape for years. They emphasized that complacency could be dangerous and that further filings would likely be necessary as new information surfaced. The emergency filing, they said, was not a final move, but part of the broader defensive framework. For Trump, the implications extend beyond the courtroom. The weakening of the Comey case may provide political ammunition during public appearances, rallies and media interviews. It may also shape voter perceptions, especially among those who believe that Trump has been unfairly targeted by political opponents. Yet critics warn that the collapse does not erase the broader context of controversy surrounding the former president. They insisted the legal battles represent deeper issues that cannot be dismissed through the collapse of a single case. Legal scholars watching the developments predicted that the emergency filing would set off a new wave of motions, hearings and judicial analysis. They expect that courts will take the filing seriously given the magnitude of the case and the public interest. Whether the judiciary ultimately agrees with Trump's arguments remains to be seen, but the filing ensures that the collapse will undergo thorough institutional review. By the end of the week, national attention remained firmly fixed on the story. Networks continued to discuss the implications. Newspapers published detailed breakdowns and political figures leveraged the moment for commentary. It was clear that the emergency filing had not only altered the trajectory of the Comey case, but had also intensified the broader national debate about political accountability and the integrity of federal investigations. As events continue to unfold, one thing has become certain: the collapse of the Comey case has yet again placed Donald Trump at the center of a political and legal storm with consequences that extend far beyond the courtroom.